The year was 2387, and Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance as it moved through the dark space between stars. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes that had seen too many empty worlds. His ship was not the biggest or fastest in the human fleet, but it was reliable, and that mattered more than anything else when you were exploring the edge of known space. The bridge was quiet except for the soft hum of the engines and the gentle beeps from the control panels. Lisa Grant sat at the navigation station checking their course while Ryan Torres worked at the engineering console, making sure everything ran smoothly. Amy Collins monitored the communications array, listening for any signals from home or from other ships that might be in the area. For almost 200 years, humans had been part of the Galactic Federation. They were not the strongest race or the smartest, but they had earned their place among the stars through hard work and determination. The galaxy was a big place with many different species, and most of them got along well enough. Trade flowed. Between the worlds and wars were rare, but everyone knew who really ruled the galaxy. The Zephyrian Empire controlled almost half of all known space, and they had done so for over 3,000 years. They were an old race with advanced technology, and they never let anyone forget that they considered themselves superior to all other life forms. Their ships were massive and powerful, and their soldiers were feared across the galaxy. Jake had met Zephyrians before, and he did not like them much. They were arrogant and cold, and they looked down on humans as if they were children playing with toys. But they kept the peace, and that was what mattered. The Federation worked because the strong kept the weak in line, and the Zephyrians were definitely strong. The Defiance was heading toward a star system called Kepler 442 that no one had ever explored before. It was far from the main trade routes, and the automated probes had detected nothing interesting there. Just another routine survey mission to map new worlds and look for anything useful. Jake had done hundreds of these missions over the years, and most of them were boring. Lisa looked up from her console and spoke in her calm voice. "Captain, we are approaching the system now. All sensors are online and ready." Jake nodded and walked over to look at the main display screen. The system had 6 planets orbiting a yellow star that was slightly smaller than Earth's sun. 3 of the planets were gas giants, and the other 3 were rocky worlds. The 4th planet from the star looked like it might have had water at one time, but now it was cold and dry. "Take us to the 4th planet, Lisa. Let's see what we can find down there." The Defiance moved closer to the planet, and Ryan started his deep scans. The sensors showed mountains and valleys and what looked like dried-up ocean beds. There was a thin atmosphere, but no signs of life. Just another dead world that had seen better days millions of years ago. But then Amy called out from her station, with excitement in her voice. "Captain, I'm getting some strange readings from the surface. There are metal structures down there. They look artificial." Jake felt his heart beat faster. Finding ruins on an unexplored world was rare and valuable. Ancient civilizations sometimes left behind technology that could be studied and used. Even the Zephyrians paid good money for archaeological finds. "Put it on the screen, Amy." The main display showed a section of the planet's surface where strange geometric shapes rose from the ground. They were clearly not natural formations. The structures were made of some kind of dark metal that the sensors could not identify. They formed patterns that looked almost like a city, but one built by minds very different from human ones. "How old are these structures, Ryan?" The engineer worked at his console for several minutes before answering. "The dating is difficult, Captain, but they appear to be extremely ancient, possibly millions of years old, maybe older." Lisa was already plotting a course to land near the ruins. "There's a flat area about 2 kilometers from the main structure complex. We can set down there safely." Jake made his decision quickly. This was exactly the kind of discovery that could make a career. "Take us down, Lisa. Full landing party with archaeological equipment." "Amy, send a message back to headquarters and let them know what we found." The Defiance descended through the thin atmosphere and landed on the rocky surface with barely a bump. Jake suited up along with half his crew, and they took a shuttle to the ruins. The structures were even more impressive up close. They towered hundreds of meters into the sky, and their surfaces were covered with symbols and patterns that hurt to look at for too long. Ryan set up his equipment and started taking detailed scans, while Amy documented everything with her cameras. Lisa used her geological training to study the rock formations around the ruins. Jake just stood and stared at the alien architecture and wondered who had built this place and why they had left. The breakthrough came when Ryan found an entrance that his scanners could penetrate. The doorway was sealed but not locked, and it opened when they approached it. Inside the structure, the walls glowed with a soft blue light that seemed to come from the metal itself. "Captain, you need to see this," Ryan called from deeper inside the building. Jake followed the engineer through corridors filled with strange machines and devices. In the center of the structure, they found a room with walls covered in symbols and what looked like star charts. But these were not just any star charts. They showed the entire galaxy in perfect detail, including systems that humans had only recently discovered. Amy was running her translation programs on the symbols, but getting nowhere. "The language is unlike anything in our databases, Captain. It predates every known civilization." Lisa was studying one of the wall displays when she made a discovery that changed everything. "Jake, look at this. This symbol here appears multiple times, and it matches something in our own genetic databases." She pointed to a complex symbol that appeared over and over throughout the room. When she ran it through the ship's computers, the results were shocking. The symbol was almost identical to a marker found in human DNA, a marker that scientists had never been able to explain. Ryan's equipment was picking up more strange readings. "Captain, these machines are still active. They're responding to our presence somehow. The power levels are increasing." As they explored deeper, they found more evidence that connected the ruins to humanity. Genetic markers that matched human patterns. Technology that seemed designed for beings with human-like biology. Star charts that showed Earth's location with special markings. Jake felt a chill run down his spine as the implications became clear. These ruins were not just ancient. They were built by the predecessors of humanity itself. The beings who had once ruled this galaxy before disappearing into legend. When they returned to the ship, Jake called an emergency meeting with his senior staff. The evidence was overwhelming and terrifying. Humanity was not just another young race trying to find its place among the stars. They were the inheritors of an ancient galactic empire that had ruled the galaxy long before the Zephyrians ever left their homeworld. "We need to report this immediately," Amy said. "This changes everything we know about human history." But Jake was thinking about the Zephyrians and how they would react to this news. They had built their entire identity around being the galaxy's dominant race. Learning that humans had a claim to ancient galactic dominance would not sit well with them at all. "Send the report," he ordered. "But encrypt it with the highest security codes. This information is going to start a war." The encrypted message from Captain Morrison reached Earth 3 days later, and within hours it was sitting on the desk of President Helen Martinez in her office, overlooking the rebuilt New York skyline. She read the report twice before calling an emergency meeting with her top advisors. Admiral Nathan Burke arrived first as always. He was a military man through and through with short gray hair and a stern face that rarely smiled. He had spent 40 years defending human space, and he understood better than most how dangerous the galaxy could be. Behind him came Dr. Emma Rodriguez, the head of the Archaeological Institute, and the smartest person Helen had ever met when it came to ancient civilizations. "Have you both read the Morrison report?" Helen asked as they sat around the secure conference table. "Yes, Madam President," Burke replied. "And I've already started moving fleet assets to defensive positions. If this information gets out, the Zephyrians will not be happy." Emma was more excited than worried. "This is the greatest archaeological discovery in human history, Helen. The implications are staggering. We're not just talking about ruins here. We're talking about proof that humans are the direct descendants of the galaxy's first great civilization." Helen looked out the window at the busy streets below where millions of people went about their daily lives, with no idea that everything was about to change. "How certain are we that Morrison's findings are accurate?" "The genetic markers don't lie," Emma said. "I've run the data through every system we have. The connection is clear and undeniable. The beings who built those ruins share our DNA. They are our ancestors." Burke was less convinced. "Even if that's true, we need to be very careful about how we handle this. The Zephyrian Empire has ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years. They're not going to accept that humans have a prior claim to anything. Helen knew he was right. The Zephyrians were proud to the point of arrogance, and they had always treated other races as inferior. The idea that humanity might have ancient rights that superseded their own empire would be seen as an insult that could not be tolerated. "What are our options?" she asked. Burke leaned forward. "We could keep this quiet, classify the whole thing and pretend we never found anything. Let Morrison's crew think it was just another dead civilization." "Absolutely not," Emma said firmly. "This discovery belongs to all humanity. We have a right to know our true heritage. Besides, word will get out eventually. You can't hide something this big forever." Helen made her decision. "We go public, but we do it carefully. I want a full presentation prepared for the Galactic Federation Council. We present our findings as a scientific discovery, not a political claim." The next morning, Helen stood before the assembled delegates of the Galactic Federation in their great meeting hall on the neutral world of Concordia. Representatives from dozens of species filled the chamber, but all eyes were on the Zephyrian delegation led by Supreme Commander Vextar Cole. Cole was a typical Zephyrian, tall and thin with pale blue skin and cold black eyes that seemed to look right through other beings. He wore the dark uniform of the Zephyrian military with enough medals and decorations to show his high rank. Helen had met him before, and she knew he considered humans to be little more than clever animals. "Honored delegates," Helen began. 3 days ago, human explorers made a discovery that sheds new light on the ancient history of our galaxy. She presented the evidence carefully and objectively. The ruins on Kepler 4042, the genetic markers that connected the builders to modern humans, the star charts that showed knowledge of the galaxy that predated all known civilizations. She kept her tone neutral and scientific, but the implications were clear to everyone in the room. When she finished, there was silence for a long moment. Then Cole rose to his feet and his voice filled the chamber with barely controlled anger. "This is preposterous," he said. "The humans expect us to believe that their primitive species built a galactic civilization millions of years ago? This is nothing more than desperate propaganda designed to elevate their status beyond what they deserve." Other delegates began to murmur among themselves. The evidence was compelling, but the political implications were staggering. If humans really were the heirs to an ancient galactic empire, what did that mean for the current balance of power? Helen remained calm. "We are not making any political claims, Supreme Commander. We are simply presenting scientific evidence for peer review. The facts speak for themselves." "Facts?" Cole's voice rose. "I see desperate fabrications from a species that cannot accept its proper place in the galactic order. The Zephyrian Empire has maintained peace and stability for 3 millennia. We will not allow this fraud to destabilize the galaxy." The debate continued for hours, with delegates arguing back and forth about the evidence and its meaning. Some species supported humanity's claims, while others remained skeptical. But everyone understood that this was about more than just archaeology. This was about power and who had the right to claim it. When the session finally ended, Cole approached Helen directly. His black eyes were filled with cold fury and his voice was quiet enough that only she could hear. "Your species has made a grave mistake, President Martinez. The Zephyrian Empire does not tolerate challenges to its authority. You have 72 hours to withdraw these ridiculous claims and destroy all evidence of this supposed discovery. If you refuse, we will do it for you." Helen met his gaze without flinching. "Are you threatening the human race, Supreme Commander? I am offering you a chance to avoid the consequences of your arrogance. Choose wisely." As soon as Helen returned to Earth, she called another emergency meeting. This time the room was full of military commanders and government officials all talking at once about the Zephyrian ultimatum. "They can't be serious," someone said. "They wouldn't actually attack human space over an archaeological find." "Admiral," Burke slammed his hand on the table. "They are absolutely serious. I've been monitoring Zephyrian fleet movements and they're mobilizing everything they have. This isn't a bluff." Dr. Rodriguez was working frantically at her portable computer. "I've been in contact with Morrison's team and they've made more discoveries. The ruins aren't just monuments, Helen. They're functional technology, ancient defense systems and weapons that respond to human DNA." What kind of weapons? Burke asked. We don't know yet, but the power readings are off the charts. If we could activate these systems, we might actually have a chance against the Zephyrians. Helen looked around the room at the faces of her advisors. Some were scared and some were angry, but all of them were looking to her for leadership. The next decision she made would determine the fate of humanity. Send a message to Supreme Commander Cole, she said finally. Tell him that humanity rejects his ultimatum. We will not be bullied into denying our own heritage. If the Zephyrian Empire wants a war, they can have one. Burke nodded grimly. I'll start activating our defense fleets. We have good ships and brave crews, but the Zephyrians outnumber us 10-1. Then we better make sure those ancient weapons work, Helen replied. Emma, I want you and your team on the first ship to Kepler 442. Find out everything you can about that technology. If our ancestors really did rule the galaxy once, then maybe they left us the tools to do it again. As the meeting broke up and people rushed to their duties, Helen stood alone at the window looking up at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Zephyrian war machine was beginning to move. In 72 hours, the galaxy would learn whether humanity was ready to claim its true destiny or if they would be crushed for their arrogance. She thought about Captain Morrison and his crew trapped at Kepler 442 with Zephyrian ships already moving to intercept them. She thought about the millions of humans living on colonies throughout the galaxy who had no idea that war was coming. Most of all, she thought about the ancient beings who had built those ruins and wondered if they had faced a similar choice long ago. The countdown had begun and there was no turning back now. The 72 hours passed like a countdown to the end of the world. Across human space, people watched their screens and waited for news while their leaders made desperate preparations for what everyone knew was coming. When the deadline expired, President Martinez stood before the cameras in her office and spoke words that would echo through history. My fellow humans, she began. Today, the Zephyrian Empire has demanded that we deny our own heritage and accept permanent subjugation to their rule. They want us to destroy the evidence of our ancestors' achievements and bow down like obedient children. I stand before you today to say that humanity will never accept such terms. Her voice grew stronger as she continued. We are not the same species that left Earth centuries ago. We have grown and learned and spread across the galaxy through our own courage and determination. We will not be enslaved by those who think themselves our betters. If the Zephyrian Empire wants war, then they will have it, but they will find that humanity is not as weak as they believe. Across the galaxy, Zephyrian reaction was swift and terrible. Supreme Commander Cole had assembled the largest military force in galactic history. Over 10,000 warships filled the space around the Zephyrian homeworld, preparing for what their leaders called the final solution to the human problem. Admiral Burke watched the enemy fleet movements from his command post on Luna Station. The numbers were overwhelming, but he had been preparing for this moment ever since receiving the Morrison report. Hidden throughout human space were defense systems that had been dormant for decades, waiting for a crisis like this one. Activate Protocol Lazarus, he ordered. Throughout human colonies, ancient systems began to wake up. On New Phoenix Colony, Colonel Danny Pierce felt the ground vibrate as massive structures rose from beneath the surface. On the mining world of Kepler Station, Captain Sophia Reeves watched in amazement as weapons platforms that had been disguised as communications arrays revealed their true purpose. But the most important awakening was happening at Kepler 442, where Captain Morrison and his crew had been trapped since the Zephyrian ultimatum. Enemy ships surrounded the system, but they had not yet attacked the human vessel. They were waiting for orders from their supreme commander. Dr. Rodriguez had arrived on the fastest ship Earth could provide, and she was working around the clock to unlock the secrets of the ancient ruins. What she found defied all previous understanding of technology and human capability. Jake, you need to see this, she called to Morrison as he entered the central chamber of the ruins. The room had changed since their first visit. The walls now pulsed with energy and the ancient machines hummed with power. But most amazing of all were the display screens that showed star charts of the entire galaxy in real time. They could see Zephyrian fleet movements and human defensive positions as if they were watching from orbit around every world. How is this possible? Morrison asked. The network extends across the entire galaxy. Emma explained. These aren't just ruins, Jake. They're nodes in a communications and defense system that spans thousands of light years. When humans approach the nodes, they activate and connect to each other. Ryan Torres was interfacing directly with one of the machines using a neural headset that Emma's team had found. His eyes were closed, but he was speaking in a voice that sounded different somehow. I can see everything, he said. Every human ship and station, every Zephyrian battle group. The network is showing me tactical data that our best computers couldn't calculate in years. Morrison felt a chill run down his spine. What are you saying, Ryan? I'm saying that our ancestors didn't just leave us ruins, Captain. They left us weapons and defenses that make Zephyrian technology look primitive. But there's more. The network isn't just responding to our DNA, it's enhancing us, making us faster and smarter and stronger. As if to prove his point, Ryan opened his eyes and Morrison saw that they now glowed with the same blue light as the ancient machines. But Ryan was still himself, just somehow more than he had been before. Back on Earth, Admiral Burke was coordinating the defense of human space from his command center. The first Zephyrian attacks had begun with strikes on 12 major colonies simultaneously. What should have been quick victories for the superior Zephyrian forces turned into bloody sieges, as human defenders fought with unexpected skill and determination. General Chris Hamilton commanded the ground forces on New Phoenix Colony where 10,000 Zephyrian Marines had landed expecting to overwhelm the small human garrison. Instead, they found themselves facing defenders who seemed to predict their every move and weapons that cut through their armor like paper. Sir, the enemy is using some kind of new technology, reported one of Hamilton's lieutenants. Our soldiers are moving faster than should be possible, and their aim is perfect. It's like they know where the enemy will be before they get there. Hamilton didn't understand it either, but he wasn't going to question good fortune. His troops had been equipped with weapons found in the ancient defense caches, and they were proving devastatingly effective against Zephyrian forces. In space, the results were even more dramatic. Captain Lisa Grant now commanded her own ship, the UES Retribution, and she was leading a squadron against a Zephyrian battle group that outnumbered her ships 3-1. But the ancient targeting systems that had been installed in her vessels were making impossible shots look routine. Target their command ship, she ordered. Ma'am, they're still 10,000 kilometers away and moving evasively, her weapons officer replied. Trust the system, Lieutenant. The weapons fired and somehow found their target despite the distance and the enemy's attempts to dodge. The Zephyrian flagship exploded in a ball of fire, and the rest of their fleet began to retreat in confusion. Similar scenes were playing out across human space, as defenders augmented by ancient technology achieved victory after impossible victory. But Supreme Commander Cole was not deterred by these early setbacks. He had fought many wars in his long career, and he knew that superior numbers would eventually prevail. Deploy the second wave, he ordered from his flagship, and prepare the Stellar Annihilator. If we cannot conquer humanity, we will erase them completely. The Stellar Annihilator was the Empire's ultimate weapon. It could trigger the collapse of a star and destroy entire solar systems. Cole had never used it before because the destruction was so complete that nothing valuable remained. But humanity had pushed him beyond the point where he cared about preserving anything. At Kepler 442, Captain Morrison was experiencing something that changed his understanding of what it meant to be human. The ancient network had accepted him as a command node, and through him it was coordinating the defense of humanity across the galaxy. He could feel every human ship and soldier as if they were extensions of his own body. Emma, what's happening? To me? He asked. Dr. Rodriguez was monitoring his vital signs and neural activity with growing amazement. The network isn't just enhancing you, Jake. It's connecting you to every other human who interfaces with it. You're becoming part of something larger. But I'm still me? Yes, but you're also more. The ancients built this system for their descendants. They knew that someday we would need to defend ourselves, and they made sure we would have the tools to do it. Morrison could feel the approaching Zephyrian reinforcements like a storm gathering on the horizon. Thousands of ships carrying weapons of mass destruction aimed at every human world. But he could also feel the awakening power of the ancient network and the millions of humans who were beginning to interface with it. They're coming, he said. but were ready for them. The second wave of the Zephyrian assault began with attacks on the core human worlds, including Earth itself. But this time the defenders were fully prepared. Ancient defense platforms that had been hidden for millennia revealed themselves and began firing weapons that tore through Zephyrian shields like they weren't there. On Earth, President Martinez watched from her bunker as the sky filled with explosions. Zephyrian ships fell like burning stars while human defenders fought with inhuman precision and coordination. It was beautiful and terrible, and she realized that humanity was no longer the species she had grown up with. They were becoming something new, something their ancestors had always intended them to be. The heirs to the greatest civilization the galaxy had ever known, and they were finally ready to claim their birthright. The war that followed shook the very foundations of galactic civilization. What had begun as a simple punishment campaign by the Zephyrian Empire turned into a nightmare that none of their military planners had anticipated. Across dozens of star systems, human forces were not just holding their ground, but actually winning battles against impossible odds. Supreme Commander Cole stood in the command center of his flagship, the Eternal Glory, watching tactical displays that showed defeat after humiliating defeat. His massive fleet that should have crushed human resistance in days was being torn apart by weapons and tactics that seemed to come from nowhere. "How are they doing this?" he demanded from his tactical officer. "Sir, our intelligence indicates that the humans have somehow acquired advanced technology from the ruins they discovered. Their ships are faster and more accurate than our projections suggested, and their ground forces appear to have enhanced physical capabilities." Cole's pale blue skin flushed darker with rage. The idea that inferior beings like humans could stand against the might of the Zephyrian Empire was unthinkable. His people had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years, and they would not be defeated by clever primates with stolen technology. On New Phoenix Colony, Colonel Danny Pierce crouched behind the ruins of what had once been the Colonial Administration building. The Zephyrian assault had been going on for 6 days, and his small force of Marines should have been overrun hours ago. Instead, they had held every position and inflicted devastating casualties on the enemy. Pierce looked at his hands and marveled at how steady they were. Since linking with the ancient defense network, he felt different, faster and stronger with reflexes that let him dodge incoming fire that should have killed him. His soldiers reported similar experiences, and their performance in battle reflected these enhancements. "Sir, we have enemy armor moving up the main avenue," reported Sergeant Kevin Blake from his position in a bombed-out storefront. Pierce could see the Zephyrian tanks through the smoke and dust, even though they were still kilometers away. His enhanced vision picked out details that normal human eyes could never detect. He also knew exactly where to hit them to disable their shields and penetrate their armor. "Target the lead vehicle with the plasma lance," he ordered. "Aim for the junction between the turret and hull." The shot traveled across the battlefield and struck exactly where Pierce had predicted. The Zephyrian tank exploded in a shower of sparks, and the advance halted as the surviving vehicles tried to figure out how they had been hit from such a distance. Similar scenes were playing out on 12 different worlds as human defenders augmented by ancient technology fought with superhuman effectiveness. The Zephyrian military machine that had conquered star systems was being stopped by garrison forces that should have fallen in the first hour of battle. In space, Admiral Burke commanded the defense fleet from his flagship, the UES Independence. His ships were outnumbered 10-1, but the ancient targeting systems and shield enhancements were proving incredibly effective. Captain Lisa Grant's squadron had just destroyed an entire Zephyrian battle group using weapons that seemed to predict where enemy ships would be before they got there. "Admiral, we're receiving reports from all sectors," his communications officer announced. "Human forces are achieving victory ratios that our computers say are impossible." Burke studied the tactical displays with growing amazement. Every engagement showed the same pattern: human forces taking on superior numbers and winning through speed, accuracy, and coordination that defied all previous military doctrine. "It's not just the technology," he realized. "Our people are different. They're better than they were before." At Kepler 442, Captain Morrison was experiencing the full power of the ancient network. Through his neural link, he could sense every human soldier and pilot across the galaxy. He felt their courage and determination, and in return he provided them with tactical information and combat enhancements that made them nearly unstoppable. Dr. Rodriguez monitored his condition with a mixture of excitement and concern. Morrison's brain activity was off the charts and his body was changing in ways that medical science couldn't explain. But he remained conscious and in control even as he became something more than human. "Jake, can you hear me?" she asked. "I can. Hear everything, Emma. Every human voice calling for help. Every enemy ship moving through space. The network is showing me the entire war and we're winning." Ryan Torres was interfacing with the ancient machines alongside Morrison. His engineering expertise combined with the network's knowledge was producing technological innovations in real time. New weapons and defenses that appeared in human inventories as fast as he could design them. "The ancients didn't just leave us their technology," Ryan explained. "They left us the ability to improve and adapt it. We're not just using their tools, we're becoming their true heirs." But the Zephyrians were not finished. Supreme Commander. Cole had one final card to play and he was desperate enough to use it. The Stellar Annihilator had been the Empire's most closely guarded secret for centuries, a weapon so terrible that even the Zephyrians had hesitated to deploy it. "Prepare the Annihilator for firing," Cole ordered. "Target the human homeworld." His officers exchanged worried glances. The Stellar Annihilator would not just destroy Earth but trigger a supernova that would sterilize everything within 50 light years. Billions of innocent beings would die, including many Zephyrian allies. "Sir, perhaps we should reconsider," his tactical officer suggested. "The collateral damage would be enormous." "I don't care about collateral damage," Cole snarled. "The humans have humiliated the Empire and they must pay the ultimate price. If we cannot rule them, we will erase them from existence." The weapon began charging as massive energy collectors focused stellar radiation into a beam that could crack open a star's core. It would take several hours to reach full power, but once fired, nothing could stop its destructive force. At Kepler 442, Morrison felt the weapon's activation like a cold knife in his heart. Through the network, he could sense the massive energies building in the Zephyrian flagship, and he knew what they intended. "They're going to destroy Earth," he announced. Emma felt her blood turn to ice. "Can we stop them?" "The network is trying to find a solution. Our ancestors faced similar threats when they ruled the galaxy. There must be defenses we haven't activated yet." Across human space, the ancient systems responded to the existential threat by revealing capabilities that had remained hidden until now. Defense platforms that had seemed powerful before suddenly displayed weapon systems that dwarfed anything previously seen. Ships that had been enhanced now found themselves equipped with technologies that seemed to bend the laws of physics. General Chris Hamilton watched in amazement as the defense grid around New Phoenix Colony suddenly sprouted massive energy cannons that reached into space itself. The Zephyrian fleet that had been bombarding his world found itself under attack from weapons that fired across interstellar distances. Captain Sophia Reeves, commanding the Intelligence Division, discovered that her enhanced sensors could now detect enemy movements through subspace itself. She could see Zephyrian reinforcements days before they arrived and position human forces to intercept them. But the greatest revelation came when President Martinez herself linked with the ancient network from the command bunker beneath Earth. As the elected leader of humanity, she found that her connection was different from the others. Through her, the network revealed its true purpose. "We are not just defending ourselves," she realized. "We are awakening." The ancients didn't disappear. They evolved beyond physical form and left their legacy for us to claim when we were ready. Morrison felt the network's full power flowing through him as Martinez's connection amplified his own. Together, they became conduits for technologies and capabilities that spanned the galaxy. The Zephyrian Empire had awakened something they could never have imagined. "The Annihilator will fire in 30 minutes, Morrison announced. "But we're ready for them now." The final phase of the war was about to begin, and humanity would either claim their true inheritance or be destroyed in the attempt. The moment the Stellar Annihilator began its firing sequence, the ancient network responded with the full awakening that had been dormant for millions of years. Across the galaxy, every human who had interfaced with the predecessor technology felt the change as their consciousness expanded beyond anything they had thought possible. Captain Morrison at Kepler 442 became the focal point for this transformation. Through him, the network channeled the combined will and knowledge of humanity's ancient heritage. He could see the Zephyrian weapon charging its terrible energies, and he could feel the fear of billions of humans facing extinction. But he could also sense something else awakening in response. "Emma, they're not just machines," he said, as his body began to glow with the same blue energy that filled the ancient ruins. The predecessors never left. They became part of the network itself. They've been waiting for us to be ready. Dr. Rodriguez watched in amazement as Morrison's form seemed to blur and shift, becoming something more than human, while still remaining essentially himself. Around him, the ancient machines were rising from the floor and reconfiguring themselves into shapes that had no earthly comparison. President Martinez felt the same transformation beginning within herself as she linked more deeply with the network, from her bunker beneath Earth. Through her connection, she could sense every human across the galaxy, and she realized that they were all becoming part of something magnificent and terrible. "Citizens of Earth," she broadcast to the planet above, "do not fear what is coming. Our ancestors have given us the power to not just survive but to reclaim our rightful place in the galaxy." The Stellar Annihilator reached full charge and Supreme Commander Cole gave the order to fire. The beam of concentrated stellar energy raced across space toward Earth, carrying enough destructive force to crack open the planet's core and trigger a supernova that would sterilize the entire solar system. But the weapon never reached its target. As the Annihilator beam approached Earth's solar system, it encountered something that should not have existed. A barrier of pure energy that spanned the entire system and absorbed the terrible weapon's force without even flickering. The beam that should have destroyed a star was swallowed as if it had never existed. Cole stared at his tactical displays, in disbelief. The Stellar Annihilator was the most powerful weapon ever created, and it had been stopped as easily as throwing a stone at a mountain. "How is this possible?" he demanded. His science officer was frantically checking his instruments. "Sir, the energy readings from the human system are beyond anything our sensors can measure. It's as if the entire solar system has become a single massive defense platform." But Earth's protection was only the beginning. Across the galaxy, the ancient network was revealing weapons and capabilities that made the Stellar Annihilator look like a child's toy. Entire star systems that had seemed empty suddenly blazed with power, as hidden installations activated after millions of years of dormancy. The Zephyrian fleet found itself facing not just enhanced human ships, but the awakened infrastructure of a galactic civilization that had once ruled the stars when their own species was still learning to make fire. Weapons that could reach across interstellar distances began targeting Zephyrian vessels with precision that defied all understanding of space warfare. Admiral Burke watched from the bridge of the Independence as the tide of battle turned completely. The ancient defense network was not just protecting human space, but actively hunting down every Zephyrian ship in the galaxy. Enemy vessels that had seemed invincible hours before were being destroyed by weapons fire that appeared from nowhere. "Sir, we're receiving surrender requests from Zephyrian commanders across multiple sectors," his communications officer reported. "They're asking for terms." But Burke could feel through his link to the network that mercy was not what the awakened systems had in mind. The predecessors had built their civilization on principles of justice, and the Zephyrian Empire had violated those principles by attempting genocide. Captain Morrison's consciousness had expanded to encompass the entire network, and through him humanity could see the true scope of their inheritance. The galaxy was filled with installations and technologies that had been hidden for eons, waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves. Star systems that had seemed barren were actually massive weapon platforms. Nebulas that appeared natural were actually construction sites where new technologies were being assembled. The Empire challenged our claim. Morrison spoke with a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Now they will face the consequences. The predecessor network did not just defend. It struck back with technologies that the Zephyrians could not comprehend or counter. Their homeworld found itself surrounded by energy fields that prevented any ship from leaving or entering. Their core systems were cut off from each other as the network manipulated space itself to isolate them. Supreme Commander Cole tried desperately, to coordinate a response, but his fleet was being systematically destroyed by weapons that seemed to bend the laws of physics. Ships vanished into tears in space itself. Others found their own weapons turning against them as the network seized control of their systems. "Send a surrender message to the humans," he finally ordered. "Unconditional surrender, full terms." But the message never reached human space. The network had judged the Zephyrian Empire and found it guilty of crimes against the cosmic order. The sentence was not imprisonment or subjugation, but complete erasure. One by one, Zephyrian worlds went dark as the ancient weapons sterilized them, not with crude destruction, but with precise technologies that simply made them uninhabitable. The proud empire that had ruled for 3 millennia was being systematically removed from existence. President Martinez felt the network's judgment through her connection, and part of her wanted to show mercy. But she could also feel the will of billions of humans who had faced extinction, and the wisdom of the predecessors who had faced similar threats eons ago. "Some lines cannot be crossed," she said, as she watched the reports coming in. "They chose to attempt genocide. The galaxy will be better without them." The final phase lasted only hours. The Zephyrian Empire that had controlled almost half the galaxy simply ceased to exist. Their ships were destroyed or abandoned. Their worlds were emptied. Their technologies were absorbed into the growing network of human-controlled systems. When it was over, Captain Morrison found himself back in human form standing in the ruins at Kepler 442. But he was forever changed by his experience as part of the network. Through him, humanity had claimed not just their heritage but their destiny as the galaxy's guardians. Dr. Rodriguez ran her scanners over him and found that while he appeared human, his genetic structure had been fundamentally altered. "You're still you, Jake, but you're also something more now. The network has made you into a bridge between humanity and our predecessor legacy." Across the galaxy, similar changes were taking place in every human who had interfaced with the ancient technology. They remained human but enhanced beyond previous limitations with capabilities that would let them guide the galaxy toward a better future. The other species watched these developments with a mixture of awe and terror. The humans who had been junior members of the Galactic Federation just days before were now the undisputed masters of known space. But rather than imposing their own empire, they began the work of building something better. President Martinez addressed the galaxy from the ruins of the Federation Council chambers. "We did not seek this power, but we will not shrink from the responsibility it brings. The predecessor network has awakened not to conquer, but to guide. Any species that seeks peaceful coexistence will find humans to be fair and generous neighbors. Those who choose the path of aggression and genocide will face the same fate as the Zephyrian Empire." Construction began immediately on new human settlements throughout former Zephyrian space. But these were not colonies in the traditional sense. They were integration centers where other species could come to learn and work alongside humans in building a better galactic civilization. Captain Morrison became humanity's first ambassador to the awakened galaxy. His permanent connection to the predecessor network made him uniquely qualified to help other species understand their place in the new order. When delegations from the Crystalline Consortium and Void Touch Collective arrived seeking trade agreements, they found him both intimidating and reassuring. "We are not the Zephyrians," he told them. "We do not seek to rule through fear, but to guide through wisdom. The galaxy has room for all who choose cooperation over domination." The transformation of galactic civilization took decades, but the outcome was never in doubt. Humanity had claimed their inheritance, not just as the heirs to ancient technology, but as the guardians of cosmic justice. The galaxy learned that there were some challenges that should never be made, and some claims that carried consequences beyond imagination. The Zephyrian Empire was gone, but the lesson of their destruction echoed through space for generations. Never again would any species attempt to challenge humanity's rightful place among the stars. The predecessors had chosen their heirs well, and the galaxy was finally ready for the golden age that had been promised millions of years before.